Welcome back to FM Jeeping. Today we're going to continue on with our doubler build series and reassembling this Ford NP205 transfer case. So I've taken this apart and it's actually relatively basic compared to a couple of the other transfer cases I've taken apart. I've done a 241 and a 231. Now we're doing a 205. This is pretty basic. There's no chain. It's basic 3 gear sets that go in. And what I'm going to try to do is build from the center out. All right, just to get everybody caught up to where we are at. This is the 205 case. It's been cleaned. It's been shaven. It's been cleaned again and then painted. And now it's got cleaned for the 3rd time. So now we're going to go ahead and reassemble. So there are 2 of these shift rail bars, or bypass lockouts, or whatever the heck they call them. I forgot to show this on the disassembly video, but there are 2 of them and they need to go in. So what I'm going to do is put these in because I want to work from the center out. So I'm going to go ahead and put these 2 in. There's one here and one down here. And the only reason I'm doing it now is because, like I said, I'm working from the center out, and once you get the gear set in, these are hard to get in. So I'm just doing it now. It's okay if they slide over a little bit, because ultimately when we get everything in, it's going to hold it in place. So once we got the lockout rails in, I took a piece of cardboard. This is roughly about 3 by 6. I dropped it over this this output down in the bottom here, the smaller of the 2. What I'm going to do is find my idler gear set. And what you should have done when you took it apart is keep track on where the bearings go, because it does matter. I'm going to drop bearing there, and then mine came with 4 shims. I'm going to put 2 shims on each side of the spacer, which is this. Okay, so now I have a washer, 2 spacers, 2 shims, and the spacer. And what you want to do is try to line this up as nice as you can, so so it's a clear shot all the way through. There we go. Then 2 more spacers. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is take my gear set and I'm going to put you up so I can use 2 hands here, because this is a super tight fit. This is so tight. Come on. There we go. Oh. And all that work I just did centering that did nothing. Okay. Alright. So now, just to kind of recap, I have the lower bearing, 2 shims, a spacer, 2 shims, and now I'm going to put the top bearing on. Right here. Okay. Now, it doesn't... now would be a good time to kind of try to center this. So, because we're going to have to put the idler shaft in, and the idler shaft has a very, very tight tolerance, as you'll see here in a few minutes. Okay, I am not even remotely close. Alright, so now what we want to do is very gently pull on this cardboard here. Maybe I'll move it over a little bit more so you can see. Okay. Alright, so we're going to gently get the gear where we want it, or close to, and then pull without dislodging everything. Pull the cardboard out, and now the bearing, the gear set should be sitting on the inner race of the case, and this is when it helps to have a long screwdriver and try to make it so the shaft will go all the way through. Now we're going to drop in the idler shaft. And the cleaner you make that pass through, the easier it is for this to go. And I made it all the way through. So I'm going to give this a couple taps with a dead blow. Let me just clean the dead blow. Okay, sounds like I got it started. I'm going to lift it up just a little bit. Check to make sure it still spins. And I think we're good. Let's take a look. All right. All right. All right, so I have the shaft fairly well seated. It probably has a little bit more to go. What I'm hoping is that when I go to torque this is 150 foot-pounds. That'll sink it in. So let's see if I'm right. I'm not sure exactly what the size is. Once again, in my last video where I did this, I didn't have the exact correct size, so I'm gonna end up using a 34 mil. And we're gonna go to 150 pounds. Yeah, that sucked. So what you didn't see before I strapped this thing literally to my toolbox, which actually I have to say, I love this option. It's a raising toolbox or a raising bench. So I literally just lifted this up, strapped it to it, and it worked. So all good. But I ended up dropping the damn wrench on my toe. I gotta go see if I broke it, but whatever, let's persevere. Alright, so this is a good time just to make sure that everything moves smoothly. It's dry, and it moves nice, it's just dry. So, it'll quiet down when I get some fluid in there. Alright, let's not forget the magnet. That's where it goes, right on this clip. As I disassembled, I tried to keep all the bolts with all the parts, so because I knew I was going to be replacing some pieces, like some of the flanges and things like that, i.e. like this cover for the idler shaft. I knew that was going to be replaced with some pretty billet stuff, and I did keep the hardware just in case. I wasn't sure if the Northwest Fab stuff would come with hardware, and lo and behold, it did. So I'm going to use that to compare and find the right size bolt to thread this in. Alright, so old hardware, new hardware. So I got the case flipped over. We're going to go ahead and do the idler shaft cover. I got some Permatex number 2 that I'm just going to put on real thin. On either side of the gasket. I'm not going crazy. Like I said, I just want them real thin. Just to make it tacky and to fill any imperfections. Oop, there we go. Right there, okay. Go ahead and put that down. Should be good there. Now, because these bolts go all the way through, I'm going to thread seal these with a little bit of Ultra Black. And then torque these down to 20 foot-pounds. All right, all done there. Now on to the next. Flip the case over again. We're gonna drive in the shift rail seals. Okay, I was not taping, but what you missed was I used a seal driver. I put a little bit of number 2, very, like literally a total skim coat of number 2 sealer right in the race here for these seals. Drove the seals in. Sorry it didn't record. I thought it was recording, but yeah, I used the seal driver, got it most of the way in, and I think I used a 22 mil to kind of get it to seat all the way down. So now I got the shift rail seals in. I'm just going to go ahead and lube these up just a little bit more, just to be on the safe side, because you definitely don't want those ripping. Okay. What I'm going to do is start the shift rails, and I'm going to put the long one on this side. And I want to make sure that these dimples face the holes that are on top. I'm not going to go too far. I just want to get it started. And if it doesn't go in smooth, those guide pins might be interfering, which this one was. There we go. I don't want to put it in all the way. I'm going to do the same thing with the small one. Put it on this side. Same thing. Going to aim the dimples right. Oh. Once again, the guide pin is in the way. Oh, you know what? I gotta get this in all the way. All right, so hold on. Scratch that. We're gonna go ahead, put the long pin in. You're gonna grab the shift fork for your front output. This has a long snout. We're gonna put that so the long snout is closer to the smaller hole for the front output. Once again, the guide pins or the interlock pins are in my way. There we go. Okay. I'll leave that like that. Put the other pin in. See if this will work. Yep, there we go. Just like that for now. Alright, so what we're going to do now, I'm going to take my input shaft bearing, take my large snap ring, and this is a little bit of a fight, but I like to start one side if you can. Just get the ridge caught, and then you can just walk it all the way around. And most times I think you can do this with your hand, or by hand. There we go. Just takes a little finagling. Okay, make sure it's fully seated, which it is. We're going to go to the input shaft side for the bearing. Hit the outer side of the race, the bearing. Don't hit the balls at all, don't hit the inner side, hit just nice, easy taps on the outside. If you don't trust yourself, use a punch. I like the hammer a little bit better. Alright, now we got it fully seated against the case, just like this. We're going to take the input shaft. This part is the fun part. Alright, let's see. Hopefully the light will show. And take the input shaft, the one that connects to the transmission. I'm going to feed it through the bearing. And you're also going to have to mesh it with the idler gear. Okay, we're good there. Turn this around, and this is where the fun begins. Because now we're going to take the smaller snap ring, the retaining snap ring, and try to get it on the shaft. Now, what's going to happen is when you go to push on this, it might go inside. So you need like 3 hands, a friend, or what I've kind of side is with these, or what I've found is with these Flat nose pliers, if you grip it from the side, kind of like this, you can see that. A little bit of a stick out. Just to start it. Gives you a little bit more meat on the vice grip to get us started, okay? And then you might need to use the vice grips or the snap rings to walk it on. Okay. Okay, one more second. This will be seated. There we go. Input shaft seated. But it did walk out on me a little bit. So okay. Alright. So I'm going to take my shift fork, long snout side, face it in this direction here. See? This, the long, there's like offset side, it's hard to see. This offset side goes toward the front of the case. Alright? And you're going to position this over that gear, and at the same time, you're going to gently try to walk on the shift rail. There we go. Shift fork is on. The shift rail is in. Now the tolerance on this is pretty tight, so it might fall off, like fall down off the gear, but it's not going to fall off the shaft. Alright, so now that we got the shift forks basically in, this is the one that the input side is the hard one, where the pin needs to be completely out and the shift to pull everything out, the shift fork. This one on the output, the front output, can stay in empty. We can load this up after the fact. So what I'm going to do now is set in the roll pin on both shift rails. As we're about to set the pin for the input here, this shift, this gear will fall off based on the position of the shift rail and whatnot. It's kind of hard to see. It really is hard to see, but just trust me. That gear will fall off, but we can set it back on once we get this fully seated. Alright, so what I'm going to try is a little trick I saw. I'm going to find the most tapered side, which looks like this. Going to put that in first. But I'm going to get a smaller punch that'll keep this from falling off while I line this up. Now this is kind of tricky. If you can get a light down there, great. Do that. But basically, I'm going to get it started. Or at least try. Okay. I think I did that. Now, I'll get the bigger punch. And what you want to do is make sure that roll pin is flat with the shift fork. Go. There. Maybe a couple more dings. There we go. It's kind of hard to see, but you want that flat. And then once that's done, you can pull this forward and gear stays on. Perfect. Now let's do the other side. Yeah, I did the hard side, or I did the easy side first, so this will be fun. Alright, so I don't have a punch that long, so So I saw this trick. We'll see if it works. Thread it in a screw. And once again, the hardest one is the one that's the deepest in there. Nope. Ooh, that's nice. Very nice. Nailed it. Heck yeah. Alright, now I need a really long punch. That should do it. There we go. Now, let's see here. Hopefully this will show. But yep, I got it started. Now I just got to drive this home. I might have to, yep, there we go. I had to move the rail just a little bit to hit it straight on. But basically, you can see it's sticking up. It's sticking out probably about half an inch or so. You want to make sure that that's flat. So give me 1 second. Let's drive this sucker home. Sound changed. I think I'm good. I just want to go a little bit more. There we go. Cool. Alright, so I flipped the case downward, and now we're going to work on the front output. So what we're going to do is grab your front output bearing, set the snap ring in, and just make sure that it seats 100%. Grab a piece of brown. Make sure it's seated all the way, which it is. Alright, so now I'm going to flip the case over and also at the same time rest it on some wood. Go. You just need some space because we're about to drop the front output shaft down through, and we need a little space to do that. So what we're going to do, my output shaft's over here, we're literally going to drop it in reverse. So I took that, I flipped that, I took this, and I'm going to basically flip it upside down. The shift fork might get in the way just a little bit, but it shouldn't be that bad. What you want to do is make sure the thrust washer is lined up still with the bearing as much as you can, just like that. Then you want to make sure, whoops, you can get the shift collar on. Let me put you down for a second while I do that. Alright, there we go. Shift collar is on. Now we take the rest of the shaft and gently guide it through. That was too easy. That was amazingly too easy. Yep. We got our front output shaft all the way seated, all the way in. I checked. Everything is moving the way it's supposed to be, which is good. Got my gasket. Now, there really only is one way you can put it on. If you put it on upside down, it will never line up right. But what you want is to make sure that this hump lines up with this hump right there. Boom. So I'm going to go ahead and throw some tack sealer on here. This is non-hardening stuff, number 2. Just a skim coat. Alright, now for this big, nice shiny piece here. Okay. Good. Now I'm going to find the bolts that came with this, and they're going to be 25 foot-pounds. I'm going to crisscross. Okay. Now we're going to set this for 25 pounds. Alright, and we'll do crisscross. Applesauce. I hope I did this right. Forgot to put the bearing inside. So I'm just going to lube it up a little bit. Get rid of all the access, but just lube it up a little bit. See if I can not drop it on the ground. See if I can gently get that seated on there. I feel better. Better rice. So now it's time to put on the rear cover for the bearing. For the front output, Northwest Fab has this cover that goes on, and I was going to seal it with some type of non-hardening gasket material. However, with all this cut into it, it's not going to, this won't seal at all. And honestly, I think this bearing is so press fit that I don't think it's going to be an issue. But what I am going to do is I'm going to do some light Loctite on these bolts and snug these up. Again, I'm just going wrists tight on this. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to drive this seal in. Make sure I have the right driver. There we go, all sealed up. Alright, and so just like the last time, I'm going to take my my flexible sealant. I'm going to go ahead and put it on both sides of the gasket, making sure I line up the oil drain hole. And let's go ahead and seal this thing. Alright, so now, just like before as well, I'm going to seal, my own personal preference, I'm going to seal the bolts But when you mount this, just be aware of the oil drain. This little notch here goes to that little hole there. So that way the oil can drain back into the case. Alright, yep, we're good. And I'm going to go in a star pattern. Let's move up the seal. Now I don't know if I'm necessarily going to keep this yoke. I might upgrade to something a different size. I'm not sure yet. But for the time being, I'm going to pretend like I am going to keep it. Lube up the seal. Throw a little bit of anti-seize. If I can find it. Alright. Just to make my life easier in the later on down the road. Gonna lace this up with a little bit of anti-seize. This is not the right yoke. Alright, so after some investigation, I found that for whatever reason, I'm going to have to kind of figure this out. This is the right yoke. However, there is no touching of the seal to this. So I got to wonder if Northwest Fab... Actually, it's not even Northwest Fab. I got to wonder why my kit came with all the same size seals. So, unless I did something wrong, which I kind of hope I didn't. But anyway, I might have to either upgrade my yoke or pull this off and change the seal, which is probably what I might do. I don't know, but for the most part, what you're going to want to do is anti-seize this, put on your yoke. They include these little spur gaskets. Put that in, make sure it's lined up with your splines. Throw on your yoke nut and pound that down to 125. But since this is not staying very long and I want to keep moving forward, I'm just going to go ahead, finger tighten this on for the time being, so I can move on to the next thing. Right. So again, it's just snugged up, but when you go to finalize this, if you have the right seal and everything, 125. So I'm going to take the rear output housing, and there's a boatload of little washers here. I mean, little rollers. We're going to get some Vaseline on here. The Vaseline will help lube it up just a little bit, but for the most part it holds everything in place. All right? A slight change of plan. So, watch what's going to happen. I probably already screwed up this bearing, which is sad because this is a Timken bearing. Actually, it's not a Timken bearing. Huh. Thought it was. Alright, well anyway, I'm going to use the new bearing that came in my kit. So, I just have to find the right race driver. Yeah, so all that work for nothing. and now I have a new retained bearing. So next time I pull this apart, hopefully if I ever have to, I won't have to do this this part again. But what I am going to do, because I know me way too well, is I'm going to put this away, get everything together. I'm going to find the missing roller. It's too quintessentially me. Another day, another hot day in Connecticut. We're going to go ahead, assemble the rear output assembly, and finish this thing up. Alright, so I was just kind of messing around. We have a rear output assembly, and what I still have to do is put the rollers in here, but we're going to do that in a minute. Instead, I want to assemble the top half of this. Now, when I took this off, there was a bunch of rollers that rolled on this surface here. Now, I lost one of the bearings. I might show that in the video, but instead they replaced it with this one-piece retained bearing. So I had to replace that. I punched the other one out, pressed this one in. The only thing I've noticed is that after I did that, I had to space this out a little bit. It was binding up. And right now there's just barely enough clearance. I'm hoping that'll do it. Then, so once again, basically, you seat this on top, put the speedo gear, and now a bearing goes on top of here, if I can find it. And my bearing already has the snap ring. The housing's a little worn. Yeah, so that part is done. Now I'm going to get the retainer, gasket it up, and we'll go ahead and set this. Now it's hard to see, but the seal has a gap right here on this, and then a double lip. I want the double lip on the outside, and I want this inner gap on the inside. Start that, get out my race driver kit. Alright, I'm going to take a look at my my yoke. Just make sure it's going to seal in the right spot. Alright, I'm going to go a little bit deeper. So what's nice about the depth of these things, if it starts to wear on the yoke, you can set the depth to a little bit different depth, so it rides on a fresh piece of metal, and you get a little bit more life out of the yoke. Let's try that. I'm gonna go a little bit deeper. Okay, that should be good right now. Yep, that's what I want, right there. This does have some type of a recessed pull, or recessed outlet here for some oil drain. However, my housing does not have it, but the bolts are keyed. Like right now, that's 100%. You turn it one side off, two of the bolts don't line up. So there's only really one way to put this on, and it's like that. So I'm just going to mark a little bit so I know which way it is, so when I go to put the gasket on, I don't have to fudge with it too much. Alright, now it's time for the housing, and I'm just checking my now it's time for the bearing retainer. These are not drilled all the way through, so I'm just going to go ahead and blue Loctite them. And these are cap head bolts. And these are going to be set for 30 foot-pounds. Alright, so I've kind of figured this out. At least for the Northwest Fab kit, they have these bolts that are threaded in. What I did is I just had these spare bolts that thread right in. We're just going to use those as leverage to torque this thing down. Take all these out. Get some anti-seize. I can find it again. Good. We'll lube up the seal, which I probably should have done earlier, but it's okay. Lube up the race on the yoke. Okay. Good. Do our little star gasket, retaining washer. I believe this is 125 to 135 or 150. Threw in one of the U-bolts for the U-joint, and gotta find what I do with my socket here. We're gonna go to 150 foot-pounds. Okay, anytime now. There we go. Good. What we're gonna do is lube it up good. So the Vaseline is really there just to kind of hold the bearings in place, because you need them riding on the outside of the little cylinder wall. So that way it can go over the output shaft or the input shaft. What I've been doing is I take a magnet, putting it on the end there, and just using it to guide. Now off camera, I forgot to mention, there's a washer that sits on top, and then a retaining ring. I'm gonna put those in later. I took those out. Some people don't. I feel like it'd be easier this way because I don't have to fight the washer to put these in. Stop. Sorry for the fan noise. It's hot, humid, and disgusting here now. We're in the middle of like a heat wave. Yeah. Last one. This will probably be the fun one. Oh, nope, took one with it. All right. Now, just clean out the washer, make sure I'm good. I'm gonna drop the washer in. Replace the washer the best I can. There we go, right on top. You might need to angle that retention clip in. Screwdriver. There we go. It's hard to see, but yep, the bearings are all in. All right, so we're on the last couple pieces here. I got to put a gasket on between this mating surface and this mating surface for the output. I'm going to do it on the case because I don't really feel like screwing with the output assembly too much because of those bearings that we just installed. I want to make sure I got the right gasket stuff. I want to make sure. All right, so we're going to do this side first. Something I've been finding is that luckily, like, this case is relatively, I would say fairly easy in terms of telling you where things are supposed to go. As long as you kind of just, I hate to say it, like, slow down, use common sense, and kind of dry fit things before you do it. Because most of the you know, housings that you have to bolt on are clocked, or they have some type of indicator telling you where to go, whether that be an oil galley built in, or like these humps here to cover the shift rail galleys. So it hasn't been terrible. I feel like the 231 was a little worse. Now it's time to torque up or bolt down the rear output housing. Just gonna thread seal some bolts. So the stuff I'm using was recommended to me by somebody who does a lot of these. And it looks like not only does it seal the thread, but it's also fluid resistant as well as vibration resistant. So that sounds like the perfect combo for something that's going to be where it is, especially on a transfer case with it bouncing around, getting hot, holding fluid. I figured that this was a good mix, so I went with the advice. So these are set for 30 foot-pounds as well. It seems like mostly everything on this case is either 25 to 30, except for the yokes, which are like between, I think, 125 and 150, which is a-okay for me. I'm gonna go, let's just start. I'm just gonna run these in quickly, and then I'll torque them when they get tight. Switch. getting to the bottom of the barrel here. Literally. Bottom of the case. So bend everything. Everything looks good. Okay, cool. Now time to put on the PTO cover. There we go. Pretty little Northwest Fab thing, and I use this gasket put around here somewhere. So just like any other time that I've done this so far, is I'm going to put number 2 flexible sealant on both sides. So we'll do that now. Just like with the other bolts, I'm going to seal them up so they supposedly don't leak. Alright, these are set to 18 foot-pounds. My gauge doesn't go that low, so I'm going to set it for 20. I don't know if this is necessarily correct, but I'm going to go ahead, Teflon tape up this plug so I can seat it, keep it from leaking. Not sure the torque spec on this, I'm just going to snug it up. Got a couple more pieces left. We got to do the bearing retainer for the input, and I've got to find the gasket. Alright, I do not think this actually comes with a gasket. I'm going to have to take a look. I don't think it does. Huh. Alright, so I'm kind of in a weird spot here. It looks like there's supposed to be a gasket, although I don't think there is. I went back and watched my video. It's kind of hard to tell. So I'm going to have to do more research because I don't have... This gasket did not come in my kit. I didn't really clean up this too much, but it doesn't look like there's ever a gasket on this retainer. So you know what? For the time being, I'm going to go ahead and just put this in, because I do have a gasket for this part of the input, which is where the I do have a gasket that goes on this side, on this mating face, for the Eco Box that we're getting. So I'm thinking what I might just do, these aren't sealed at all, maybe what I'll just do is snug these up to about 25 foot-pounds, and we'll call that a day. I gotta do a little bit more research on this. Alright, I'm gonna set this for 25 foot-pounds. I believe these are quarter. Yep. Run this in by hand. Also too, what I didn't cover is that there is an oil passage. Make sure it lines up to the one in the block. If you look at this is a different input. I haven't seen this on too many of these, but this little patch here, there's nothing like it on the rest of the retainer. This is where the oil drains back into the case, and it lines up with the hole that was there. So let's click. Okay, let's flip this over. All right, a couple more house cleaning things, and then we can call this good. Is I need to put the caps back into, we'll call it the spy holes for the roll pins. Find the right punch for these. Use them. I think so. Okay, good. A little bit more. There we go. Okay, good. Now the ball detents. Alright, so now we're going to the point where we're going to put the ball detents in. Now, if you are going to be reusing the factory ones, make sure you put them back in the same spot that you pulled them out of. If you check my disassembled video, I did that. I marked which ones are coming out of. But I'm elected to use some JB Custom Fab adjustable ball detents, because one of the big things that I'm hearing about about detents is sometimes they're not strong enough, sometimes they're too weak. At least with the adjustable ball detents, you can adjust it for the weight of your rig, for the shifter setup of your rig, and things like that. So since this is a new install on brand new adjustable modified shift rails, we're just going to go ahead and kind of drop these in. I don't believe they are, yeah, they don't appear to be rail specific. The balls look the same, so we're just going to go ahead and drop them in and get them going. So, ball in, spring in, and now this is threadable, so you can adjust the temp, ooh, like even just right off the go, that's tight. There we go. Okay, so that's good right there for now. Once again, I'm not even going to claim to know how to adjust these the right way. I'm just going to tell you that it's different for every rig. Probably based on, like I said, weight, gear setup, shifters, all that other good stuff. But I'm just getting it in so that way I can at least kind of seal the box so nothing can fall in. And I'll be able to move the box around or put it in storage until I'm ready to use it. Go. That's it. All right, let's close this video out with a quick summary. This is my first 205 rebuild. I think it went together pretty well. Everything seems to be functioning the way it's supposed to. No real major hiccups with the exception of the yoke problem that I'm going to have to figure out. And I don't think it's even really a problem. It's really just pulling off the housing. getting a new gasket and getting the right yoke or upgrading yokes. We'll see. But for all intents and purposes, putting the assembly back together went pretty well. A couple things that apply to me that may not apply to everybody is I did upgrade to the modified shift rails because I didn't feel like doing it, and the price was right. I also did the JB conversions adjustable detents, which seemed to be the right thing to do because it will allow me to adjust the tension I need to shift. But yeah, so like in hindsight, I'm pretty happy with everything I went with so far. You know, time will tell. I did overbuy on my my rebuild kit because Northwest Fab sent me gaskets with the parts. Gaskets came with the rebuild kit, and I only used a handful of the bearings in the rebuild kit, but spares are always welcome, things like that. So just be careful, try not to overspend, do your homework, and just be careful. This case weighs a ton, but I'm really excited to see what the next phase is, which is the EcoBox. That should be coming up hopefully in the next week or so, once it gets in, and then we'll rebuild that. So with that being said, we'll catch you on the next one.